What's up, guys? I haven't posted in a while because I've been preoccupied with things that are more easily leveled up in the real world, like focusing on my mindfulness, spirituality, and learning new skills, learning how to code. I've been somewhat distracted, to be honest, by the amount of dopamine that I have received from social media websites such as Omegle and AI websites as well. So it's hard for us to become conscious, to become aware of our surroundings when you are constantly bombarded with information. And now it's no longer about the information that you gather, because that was the competitive advantage in the 90s. Since the late 2000s, 2010s, the competitive advantage now is differentiating between the inefficient data and the data that will get you the results that you want, that you need. Unfortunately, the amount of information we're exposed to is it's a blockage, and you have to memorize the right things instead of just memorizing useless information like chemical compounds. Like, no one needs to know that unless you're working in skincare. And if you're working in skincare, you're a little bitch, let me slap you. But I am fearful that organizations such as the World Economic Forum, especially since I finished a book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and at the end of the book, he has a section where he talks about the creation of consciousness, that we may be able to code inorganic consciousnesses or create a human brain or something similar to a human brain inside of a machine that would be so much more efficient and productive than humans ourselves. We could replace ourselves with beings that don't have flaws. And I feel as though this is missing the point, because consciousness at the moment, even though there may be restrictions upon it, it's the one thing that we can control. It's the one thing, like, maybe we're not blank slates, but we can control to some extent, to some degree, our consciousness, which is tied to free will. Like, if you believe in consciousness, then there's some degree of free will, that as long as you are aware of what's going on, aware of your surroundings, aware of how you got here, where you came from. And nerds will rationalize this away with intelligence, but if you're aware of what's happening, then you have some degree of control, or at least a perception of control over where you're headed. And even as woo woo as it seems, like, it is connected to Buddhist ideas, where and liberalism's turned Buddhist ideas on its head anyway. But traditional Buddhism, empathy and compassion as connections to consciousness, and that consciousness shines, glows, changes colours, and becomes fluorescent, projects fluorescent light expanding outwards when you show empathy and warmth to other people and consideration. It flourishes in silence, at the silent, intimate moments, connections, looking into the eyes of a beautiful woman, or even when you're facing death. And that's when consciousness shines the brightest. Hang on. Sorry, I got distracted by my dad there. So, when you take that away and you attempt to replace it with something artificial, then And you're missing the point, and it limits our experiences. You know, if there's no meaning, if you can just place our minds into machines and leave the organic realm, the realm of matter. Matter is impermanent, but you move into a digital realm which is infinite and none of us can die, then you can just watch the same repeats over and over again, and none of the cast of your favorite television show dies, and we have an infinite amount of options. Studies have shown the paradox of choice, that when we're given an infinite amount of options, it doesn't necessarily make us happy. In fact, it diminishes happiness. And you reach a number of different potential outputs, possibilities, and then you reach a point of diminishing returns. So you're bombarding yourself with all of these choices, and you can live forever and have everything you want. You're not gonna want anything, and it's a depressing existence. But I fear consciousness becoming commoditized. What do I mean by that? Well, say hypothetically speaking, and Yuval talks a bit about this, that you can have implants in your brain to connect you to a global database. Now, freedom is kind of a psyop. I don't know if you're ever actually free, and maybe you can debate free will and consciousness. And yes, I believe that consciousness can't easily be justified and rationalized away, especially when we're doing so much research into it, as a society, as a species. I don't know. But say, hypothetically speaking, that you can have an implants in your brain that connects us all together to a global network, and say if we had like a hypothetical cookies implanted in there, and say if we had the government tracking our thoughts, like, because we can share our thoughts together, and you can combine your thoughts with that of others, and it does break a lot of ethical guidelines where your consciousness, I know consciousness and thinking, like thinking is just they're just objects inside of your consciousness. But if your awareness of your thoughts, your awareness of your consciousness can get somewhat, I don't know about restricted, but like influenced by it, then they're controlling the one thing that you have. The one thing that you have is your depth of consciousness, which can be controlled to an extent by external measures. And although you are not the external measures, you are what is perceiving. You're perceiving the perceiver of the external measures. And when that's controlled by having the thoughts of others and joint awareness with other people, that's not natural, not based on, and the depth that we can feel has already been limited. Like it's not based on compassion or anything like that. It's just based on TikTok fuckboys wanting to get off your thoughts. It's it's just extremely creepy. I wouldn't want anyone looking into my past, but I don't like the idea at all. I wouldn't want companies, organizations profiting from this, profiting from a joint memory bank. And this is related to cyborgs, turning us into cyborgs, and it misses the point entirely, assuming that consciousness is just thinking, and you'll never have consciousness quite like ours because emotions are inefficient and ineffective. But I think it's our mortality that makes them real, that makes them so intense, is the fact that we are mortals. And I used to think, transhumanism is very interesting. It's a good idea. I mean, I'd love to live inside of a tree and just never die and be evergreen and be immortal, at least. But, you know, now I'm considering that I don't want governments and these companies to just intrude upon the natural processes of life that create the most intimate moments for us. The silences in between and staring into the eyes of a beautiful woman and facing death after having lived a good life and being prepared to, if life repeats itself, if we're like in a constant loop, to repeat your life all over again and you wouldn't change a single thing. And then you can just digitize and commoditize all of that, and I feel as though it's wrong. So these are my views on transhumanism. I mean, we can't ban based on this, of course. Your feelings don't matter. It's cold economics, but uh, you're not going to stop the cyborg revolution. You're not going to stop the next stage in human evolution where we're going to consider these systems even more. We're already implanting spy chips inside of flies and controlling the frequencies of sharks to detect enemy tanks, control sharks like remote controls, and we have cows injected with steroids, feeding them grains. So of course they're going to treat your consciousness like nothing more than mere thinking, like nothing more than cattle, and they're not going to consider it to be the point where all art and creativity evolved from, because you can have artificial intelligences that are way more creative than us if creativity is based on practicality, if it's both novel and of use to others, the majority. And of course, with utilitarianism and modern liberalism, we're going to want to snatch that. We're going to want to snap it up. So I'm talking about liberal economics here. So yeah, we're pretty much fucked. Everything's fucked. And hope and freedom increasingly, and probably is, it seems like a psyop. And there probably are psyops, to be honest. Because we have very little evidence to show otherwise. And one day, as artificial intelligence gets more advanced, we're just going to leave behind religions and you'll have sex dolls that are more engaging and interesting than human females, and the people of 4chan will be looking for them, scouting for them as base trad wives. Ugh.